All right, I'm going to get us started. My name is Zan. I'm the development director at Rainforest Action Network. And we're going to be talking about insurance intervention today, stopping fossil fuels before they start. This year, Rainforest Action Network has been challenging corporate power for 40 years. It's our 40th year this year. And supporters on this Zoom have invested significant resources in our effective long-term campaigns. So thank you, and you'll hear about some of your recent impact today. Right now, RAN is pushing back against multinational financial institutions and brands to stop deforestation in their investments and supply chains. And we're working to stop the expansion of fossil fuels, especially methane, which is also known as liquefied natural gas or LNG, in the Gulf South region of the United States, all with human rights and partnerships at the center of our work. RAN is made for this moment with the vacuum of global governmental leadership, delayed climate policies, and an all-out assault on rights. RAN is filling the gap by pressuring companies that are creating climate problems into driving necessary solutions. With our focus on corporations, RAN is effectively continuing our work despite the ever-shifting context that we're in. Please drop questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. Today, you're going to hear from Diane Enriquez, Campaigns Director at RAN, who will tell you about our climate and energy work, and she'll introduce our main presenter today, Ethan. Diane, over to you.
Thank you, Zan. So over the last 5 years, we've had a lot of success moving some of the largest financial and insurance institutions in the world to create policies to mitigate their climate impact. Our team's goal is to stop the expansion of fossil fuels, support a just transition, and continue to deepen our relationship with our partners in the Gulf South of the US and Southeast Asia. In the past couple of years, with mounting anti-ESG sentiment, we have seen a chilling effect on progress, especially among banks. And we'll share more about our work with banks at a webinar later on this year, covering our Banking and Climate Chaos report. However, at the same time, we have effectively pressured insurance companies to change their behavior and have seen significant gains. We're focused on partnering with a broad coalition in the Gulf South of the US, and together we're addressing decision makers with a variety of tactics. I'm really excited to introduce to you our senior energy finance campaigner, Ethan Nuss, who will tell you about recent wins in our insurance campaign and how his work has been so effective. So Ethan?
Thanks, Diane. I want to first start off with sharing some good news, which we don't seem to have as much of these days. Just in the last week, we've been able to announce that Chubb, the global insurer, is no longer insuring Calcasieu Pass LNG, which was a major campaign goal of ours that came with an exclusive reporting from Inside Climate News. This is a huge win for our partners in Southwest Louisiana and for all of us in our shared climate, and is part of this growing pattern we're seeing where through our campaign pressure and our partnerships last year, Chubb also dropped Rio Grande LNG. And recently, we've also worked with our global partners to announce that Chubb has ruled out the East African crude oil pipeline, becoming the 30th major global insurer to do so, which is having a huge impact for communities in Uganda and Tanzania. And part of that larger pattern is that Chubb just recently, in its very recent sustainability report, said that they have dropped 32 major, and these are companies over $1 billion in revenue, oil and gas clients just within the last year. So in summation, all of these wins is part of this growing pattern through the last 4 years of our campaign on Chubb. And all of these are rooted in policy through careful inside-outside strategy and negotiation, with Chubb first announcing the first oil and gas policy in 2022 with our pressure and updating it in the last couple of years that have led to all these victories. So it's that long-term support to get us this long-term change. Unfortunately, Chubb is still one of the world's largest insurers of fossil fuels, so our campaign continues. Next slide. So, which leads me to a little context about the insurance and climate crisis and how they're intricately linked. We're seeing right now, as climate impacts are intensifying, insurance rates at the same time are skyrocketing. This is hitting families in their pocketbooks at a time when we're already seeing economic difficulty and already suffering some of those climate impacts. Look no further than in Louisiana, where some of our partners are, which is currently experiencing the highest insurance rates in the nation. And how this all comes back to our campaign is that before any fossil fuel project is built, any coal plant, pipeline, methane terminal, it needs three things: permits, money, and insurance. And so by going after the insurance companies, we're able to remove a key pillar of support for the fossil fuel industry. And another way that this is all intricately linked is the incredible losses that we're seeing for the insurance industry from climate change. And just in the last 20 years, a recent report from our partners at Insure Our Future found that a third of all weather-related insured losses are climate attributable, meaning this is over $600 billion in losses for the industry. And it's getting worse every year as the climate impacts intensify, with 27 billion last year alone. And just to give a specific example, Chubb reported this year, earlier this year, with $1.5 billion in reported losses from just the LA wildfires alone. And this is ironic given that 1.5 billion is the amount that they get in direct fossil fuel premiums every year. So the math just doesn't start to make sense. It's clearly bad business for these insurers to be paying out these catastrophic losses on one hand, but only making about that same revenue on the other. It's just not a sustainable business model. And not only is it not sustainable for their business, but it's unsustainable for all of us and demonstrates the hypocrisy at the core of the industry. We see insurers as the protectors of communities, as experts in risk. Not only are they failing at protecting our communities, but they're actively fueling the fire by underwriting these polluting terminals, and at the same time abandoning communities that are on the front lines, leaving us, ratepayers, those communities to pick up the bill. And of course, the hardest hit are those communities that are most vulnerable, low income, communities of color, and particularly those in the global south that are underinsured. Next slide. Which leads to this prime example of some of our work with our partners in Louisiana, with the fishing communities there who have been fighting for years to push back on the expansion of methane terminals in their community. It's having a devastating impact on their livelihood. We're talking about multi-generational, small family businesses, shrimp, oyster, crab, fisher folk that sustain themselves the entire year on what they're able to catch during that season. And here, some of these photos here are from Cameron, Louisiana, which used to be the shrimp capital of the world. And now these fisher folk are reporting up to 50% loss in catch. And they've documented this in court filings and the lawsuits they've brought against the industry. So we really see this epic choice here between a seafood industry, the cultural heritage of Louisiana, when we think of Louisiana and shrimping and that food, and the culture of these fishing families. Many of them are of indigenous heritage, and the cultural and multi-generational aspect that goes into sustaining that livelihood. So it's that type of heritage versus the industry of fossil fuels that is increasingly taking over. Additionally, it's also a huge safety risk to these fisher folk as they're out on their boats. Every time a methane terminal is exporting that gas overseas, they bring in over 1,000-foot LNG tanker. These are massive boats that they have to dredge these shallow waterways, these estuaries, which disrupts the spawning for the shrimp and for the oysters. And as those big boats those big tankers come through, it creates incredible wake that not only can damage these smaller fishing vessels, but in some cases sink them. And the fisher folk and their entire way of life is just being pushed out. As the industry continues to grow, they have bought up all of the docks where they do their business. And now in Cameron, there is only one remaining dock left where they're able to fish from. This additionally is a massive impact on their health. Many of our partners pictured here in these stories, in these photos, have personal stories about how cancer and asthma and all these rare skin conditions are impacting them personally and their families. Just this morning in a meeting with a Swiss insurer, heard the fisher folk talk about how some of them, they used to spend the night out on their boat during the fishing season, but now they have to come home because spending that much time out there near these polluting facilities, they're getting nosebleeds and worse health impacts that they can't deal with. And they're seeing their children missing more and more school because of asthma attacks and things like this. And this is not an outlier. This is documented, the amount of permit violations of the Clean Air Act that we've seen. In this upper right, you see a picture of a shrimp boat there, and in the back, it's a little hard to see in the picture, but is the flare from one of these terminals that was reported last year, that it was actually flaring more days than it was not. And in 2022, over 2,000 violations of the Clean Air Act. So these facilities pollute day and night, and the fishing community is really looking for a reprieve. And last but not least is, of course, the impact on our shared climate, with reports coming last year that the entire life cycle of the methane export industry is worse than coal. And we know that methane alone is 80 times more potent than carbon in a 20-year life cycle. So stepping back, the US is already the #1 exporter of methane in the world. And these communities are now on the front line of the largest proposed fossil fuel build out of our lifetime. Next slide. Which leads us to our campaign and our theory of change, that if we escalate our pressure on Chubb by partnering with Louisiana fishing families, then Chubb will stop insuring Calcasieu Pass LNG by March, which they've done, and Cameron LNG by June. So a little bit about Rand's theory of change. We start really large with a big picture, looking at this large fossil fuel build out, and then narrow in very specifically on what are the communities, what are the terminals, where can we have the biggest impact, and then put all of our pressure behind that, with the idea of being able to move the entire industry. With the example of Chubb, in the US, they're a relative leader. They see themselves as a global insurer, and so we're working to raise the bar when comparing them to their global peers. And additionally, Chubb's approach of that incremental policy is actually ideal given our current context, political context, where banks were making large net zero commitments. Chubb has been quietly advancing their policy. And the importance of sharing these stories of our community partners and forefronting them in our campaign is not only a moral choice, but we have seen it be effective in making personal appeals to the executives of companies like Chubb and moving them towards action and inspiring others around the world to take action in solidarity. Next slide. So some of what that looks like is grassroots pressure. Just in the last several months, we put a tremendous amount of pressure on Chubb to drop these polluting terminals. Over 100,000 emails to their board from supporters, letters from the front lines, from frontline communities to global insurers. And of course, it's not just that outside pressure, but the inside engagement as well. that's what gets us to the table. And as I mentioned earlier, just this morning, some of those Fisher folk meeting with a Swiss insurer. We regularly help facilitate these meetings between communities and insurers to help them get the real story behind what's happening from their clients and hear the impacts. Investigative reports. This is key to the work because the industry is intentionally opaque and does not want to be publicly known who they are insuring. So by using public records requests, we're able to expose and publicly publish who the insurers are behind these terminals. And a great example of that is our effort working with communities and global partners and our original research to reveal and expose all of the insurers behind Calcasieu Pass LNG earlier this year. And then of course that helping lead to Chubb no longer insuring that terminal. And we're able to do that with media. By those partnerships and offering that original research to media organizations as exclusives, and then also using ads and our own means to bring the message directly to those decision makers. So this image here of the sinking ship is this image that we've produced over and over again to the Chubb board through digital ads targeting them, full page newspaper ads in their hometown newspaper. Just next week, those board members will receive 5,000 postcards from RAND supporters around the world featuring that image and calling on them to take action. And last but not least, direct action. Action is, after all, our middle name, as we like to say, and an example of the type of actions, creative actions that RAND does is here in some of these images that feature Chubb's annual signature golf tournament, at which we have disrupted for the last 2 years now. And just this year, as you can see, the dropping a banner saying Chubb stop insuring methane, and releasing this flurry of fake cash featuring our campaign message into the box, the corporate box where the executives were watching the game. Next slide, please. Here's my last slide, just sharing just a couple of highlights of the last couple of years of the action that have been taken. In the upper left here, as part of the Global Day of Action, frontline communities marching in downtown Manhattan at the headquarters of Chubb and other insurers. On the upper right, I really enjoyed this photo because it's from that same week of action taken in Tokyo, where they are also calling on Japanese insurers to stop insuring Cameron LNG. So it's been incredible to see that global solidarity with this campaign. And last but not least, this very recent example of these holiday cards in the lower right, where the fishing community sent a compilation of photos of their loved ones, of their family members, of their boats to Chubb board members for the holidays, wishing them happy holidays and making a personal moral appeal for them to no longer insure these methane terminals that are impacting their lives. And you know, all of this happens over multiple years. So thank you for your support. Your continued giving is really what allows us to create this long-term change over time. And just as I mentioned earlier, just this next week on June 1st, Chubb will decide whether or not to insure and renew their policy with Cameron LNG. So we'll drop in the chat here an action you can take in addition to urge them to do the right thing and not renew that policy with this polluting terminal. So thank you so much, and we'll go now to questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ethan. We are getting some questions into the Q&A box, so thank you all for your interaction. And I'm going to introduce my colleague, Emily, who's also on the development team, to ask the first question from there, and then we have other ones coming in to take us to 30 after. Emily?
Yeah, thanks, Anne. And thanks, Ethan and Diane. Great presentation. We did have one come in that feels like a good one to kick us off. So it's, do you use the terms LNG and methane interchangeably? Diane, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So LNG, or liquefied natural gas, is a gas that has been cooled to a liquid state so that it's easier to store and transport. It's a cocktail of fossil fuels that's mostly made up of methane. And methane is a powerful greenhouse gas that is acquired through fracking. It is 80 times more harmful to the atmosphere than carbon dioxide, and it leaves a greenhouse footprint that is 33% worse than coal. So, liquefied natural gas, or LNG, is a marketing term from the fossil fuel industry that is meant to deliberately mislead the public. And focus group research shows that more than half of participants had a positive view of the term natural gas, but the advantage shrunk immediately when you called it natural methane gas, as well as fossil gas or fracked gas. So it's important for us to push back against the blatant greenwashing from the fossil fuel industry and call it what it is. It's methane gas, it's a fracked gas, it's a dangerous fossil fuel that is legitimately worse than coal. And so, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Diane. It's like calling coal natural rock or something like that. Ethan, I'm going to send you the next one. And it's a question that is talking about reports. Our BOCC report, we list the banks by how much they've invested and lent to fossil fuels. Do you do that for the insurance companies as well? And who are the biggest insurers in this market?
Yeah, great question. We do not have an equivalent to BOCC, Banking on Climate Chaos, for insurance companies. And in part because that data is very difficult to obtain, as I was mentioning earlier, with the banks, because it is those investments can be made public, and we can get that data. However, with insurers, knowing who they're insuring or how much they have invested in particular projects or companies is very opaque. So what we do have is through our partnership with Insure Our Future and their annual scorecard that came out this last December, showing that in there, and I can put that link in the chat as well, that Chubb is one of the largest insurers of fossil fuels in the world. And sometimes you have to kind of read between the lines to get to that ever elusive number. So as I mentioned earlier, Chubb just released their sustainability report, in which they didn't outright say how much they were putting towards how much they got in fossil premiums from fossil fuel companies. But if you do the math between what they are investing in, what they consider clean energy, we're able to arrive at the number 1.5 billion, which is consistent with reporting from the Wall Street Journal and from other sources. So so we are able to see that there, that they do have a large and outsized impact of propping up the industry. And aside from investments through their underwriting, and as I mentioned earlier, being one of those three key components to on whether or not a fossil fuel project is ever built, that is one of the biggest ways that they support the industry. And so we've really focused on that.
Great, thank you. We had another one come in through the chat. Does the LNG terminal close down if the insurance policy is not renewed? Which one of you wants to take that one?
I can take that. I wish it was that simple, that it was that they would close their doors the next day. However, it is, as with all things in the financial market, there's complexity. Though we do know that, again, insurance being one of those key foundations to operating these terminals. And they rely very heavily on, because these are such large facilities with so much risk involved, they rely very heavily on those insurers. And so when one insurer drops a terminal, it does have an impact on the others that are always looking and comparing, always looking to their peers about looking for signals of risk in the marketplace. And when they see that, it does have a big impact. Additionally, and this is, we can say this through some of our investigative research, that the industry will not publicly acknowledge what the level of impact that losing a single insurer might have. However, through that public records request process, they have written legal documents saying that by losing a single insurer, and this is some of their argument for why they should not have to disclose it publicly, by losing a single insurer, they say that it has a detrimental impact on their business model, and trying to make the case that that should be proprietary for that reason. So, so once the doors are closed, they reveal of just how important the insurers are to their entire operation.
Totally. That's great. Thanks, Ethan. And that's definitely one thing we've seen in RAND's history, is that when the largest company changes their behavior, that it affects a lot of other corporations. And so having the largest North American insurer drop 32 projects is a great sign. So good work. I'm going to ask one more question that I'm sure you can answer in 1 minute, and then we'll close. But how do you anticipate the current administration's executive orders related to energy and the environment impacting this campaign and the industry?
It's a huge impact. I mean, expanding the fossil fuel industry, and particular methane, is, as we all know, a top priority for this administration. And they can rubber stamp every permit, but they can't guarantee that the private sector is going to finance and insure it. And that's where we come in. And that's why our campaign of an economic intervention is so key, particularly now with the context of economic uncertainty and global trade wars, is really creating a lot of difficulty within particularly the global trade of methane export. So by taking advantage of that uncertainty with our campaign, there's a very good chance we can continue to demonstrate that financial risk to more financiers, insurers, and banks through our campaigning.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you all so much for the great presentation, Zan, Diane, and Ethan. It was really informative. And thank you all for coming and asking such great questions, and of course, all the support that you give to RAN. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us directly, and I'll be sending the recording around, so you can feel free to share it with anybody that might be interested. Thanks again for coming, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.